Sweat beads on Nia Jackson's brow in Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport's July heat as she watches her Delta jet roll in. Suddenly, Captain Victor Hargrove bursts from the gate, his silver hair glinting, voice booming racial slurs at her for loitering. Passengers freeze, jaws drop. Minutes later, breaking news flashes. His license is suspended. Nia, the FAA director, smirks faintly, but the screen cuts black. Was this justice or the start of chaos? Her future teeters on a knife's edge. Hey, where are you watching from? If you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe for more wild tales. What's Victor's next move? Nia Jackson stood near Gate C-17 in Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her dark eyes scanning the shimmering tarmac through floor-to-ceiling windows. The July sun baked the concrete outside, pushing the temperature past 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and the terminal buzzed with the chaos of summer travel. Families dragged overstuffed suitcases, their wheels squeaking against the polished floor. A toddler wailed 3 rows over, his voice piercing the hum of chatter. Business travelers in wrinkled suits barked into phones, pacing near the coffee kiosk. Nia, 42, blended into the crowd effortlessly. Her navy blazer hugged her frame, paired with a crisp white blouse and faded jeans that spoke of practicality over flash. She exuded a quiet strength, her braided hair swept into a neat bun, her posture straight despite the weight of a long day. As director of the Federal Aviation Authority, she carried an invisible mantle of power, but today she was just another passenger, or so she intended. Her flight to Chicago loomed 30 minutes away, a chance to get home to her son after a grueling week of meetings. She tapped her phone, scrolling through emails about runway safety protocols, her mind half on work, half on the promise of a quiet evening. The gate area pulsed with life. A young couple snapped selfies by the departure board, their laughter cutting through the din. An elderly man in a faded cowboy's cap dozed in a plastic chair, his cane propped against his knee. Nia adjusted her carry-on bag, a sleek black roller she'd tucked beside her, and glanced at the jet bridge. The Delta plane she'd boarded soon sat idle, its nose pointed toward the terminal like a resting beast. She took a slow breath, savoring the anonymity. Traveling incognito was her habit, a way to see the aviation world through the eyes of the public she served. No private charters, no flashing her title. Just a woman heading home. Her thumb hovered over an email from her assistant when a shadow fell across her, sharp and sudden. "Lost, sweetheart." The voice was gravelly, thick, with condescension, slicing through the terminal's noise like a blade. Nia looked up, her pulse quickening. Captain Victor Hargrove loomed over her, all 6 feet 2 inches of him radiating arrogance. His silver hair gleamed under the fluorescent lights, combed back in a style that screamed old-school aviator. His Delta uniform clung to his broad shoulders, the 4 gold stripes on his epaulets catching the eye of anyone who cared to notice. At 55, he carried himself like a man who'd conquered the skies and expected the ground to bow too. His blue eyes narrowed, lips curling into a sneer as he sized her up. Nia's fingers tightened around her phone, but her face stayed calm, a mask honed by years of dealing with men like him. "I'm fine, thank you," she said, her tone even, clipped. She shifted her weight, ready to step aside, but Victor planted himself firmly in her path, boots scuffing the tile. His smirk widened, revealing teeth stained faintly yellow from years of coffee and cigars. The crowd around them slowed, heads turning, sensing a brewing storm. A gate agent in a blue vest paused mid-conversation, her clipboard forgotten. Victor leaned in, close enough that Nia caught the faint whiff of his aftershave, a cheap musk that clashed with the terminal's sterile air. "You sure about that? You look like you don't belong here," he said, his voice dropping into a mocking drawl. "Maybe you're waiting for the bus station. This is an airport, darling. Big planes, important people." A chuckle rumbled in his chest, and a few passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Nia and the pilot. A woman in a sundress clutched her purse tighter, whispering to her husband. Nia's jaw clenched, heat rising in her chest. She knew this game, had played it too many times. The assumptions, the jabs, the casual cruelty wrapped in a smile. But she wasn't just any target. I'm exactly where I need to be, Nia replied, her words sharp now, cutting through his bravado. She straightened, meeting his gaze head-on. And I suggest you watch your tone. Victor's smirk faltered for a split second, surprise flickering in his eyes. He wasn't used to pushback, not from someone he'd already dismissed. His head tilted, sizing her up again, and then he laughed, a loud barking sound that echoed off the glass walls. The crowd thickened, drawn by the spectacle. A teenage boy in a hoodie pulled out his phone, filming discreetly from 10 feet away. Watch my tone? Oh, honey, you don't get to tell me anything, Victor said, stepping closer, his shadow swallowing her. People like you ought to know their place, standing around clogging up my gate like you own it. What's your deal, huh? Missed your flight to nowhere? His voice dripped with venom, the word people landing like a racial grenade. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. A man in a polo shirt muttered Jesus under his breath, shaking his head. Nia's blood boiled, her calm cracking under the weight of his words. She'd faced prejudice before, but this was raw, public, unfiltered, and from a pilot, no less. Someone she oversaw. She reached into her blazer pocket, fingers brushing the cool edge of her FAA badge. Time to end this. I'm Nia Jackson, she said, her voice rising just enough to carry. Director of the Federal Aviation Authority, and you're Captain Victor Hargrove, correct? She flipped the badge out, holding it steady, the gold seal glinting under the lights. Victor's eyes widened, his smirk vanishing as if slapped off his face. The crowd hushed, a collective intake of breath sucking the air from the space. The gate agent dropped her clipboard, the clatter loud in the silence. Nia pressed on, her stare unflinching. You've just humiliated yourself in front of 50 witnesses. I'd rethink your next words. Victor blinked, his brain scrambling to catch up. The badge hung between them like a guillotine, its weight sinking into him. For a moment, he looked like a man who'd stepped on a live wire, frozen mid-shock. Then his face hardened, the arrogance flooding back. He crossed his arms, leaning back on his heels, and let out a low, bitter chuckle. FAA, huh? Fancy title for a nobody. You think that scares me? I've been flying longer than you've been breathing, lady. You don't run me. His voice rose, daring her to push harder. The crowd murmured, some nodding in his favor, others glaring at him. A woman, with a stroller edged closer, her lips pursed in disgust. Nia's heart pounded, but her expression stayed stone cold. She slipped the badge back into her pocket, her mind already racing ahead. This wasn't just about her pride anymore. This was a pilot under her jurisdiction, spewing hate in a public terminal. She'd seen his type before, coasting on privilege, untouchable until they weren't. You're wrong, she said, her voice low, lethal. I can and will report this. Step away, Captain, or I'll make sure you don't fly tomorrow. Her threat hung heavy, a promise wrapped in steel. Victor's eyes narrowed, searching her face for a bluff. He didn't find one. You wouldn't dare, he snarled, his breath hot with fury. Go ahead, try it. My union's got my back. You're just a paper pusher with a grudge. What's a little complaint gonna do to me? He spread his arms, mocking her, inviting the challenge. The teenage boy's phone stayed steady, capturing every word. A businessman in a gray suit muttered "asshole" loud enough for Nia to hear, and she almost smiled. Victor's confidence was his armor, but she knew how to pierce it. She'd spent years climbing the FAA ladder, outsmarting men who thought they owned the sky. This was her turf. I don't need to try, Nia said, stepping forward, closing the gap he'd tried to dominate. I've got the authority to ground you right now. Keep talking, and you'll see how fast I move. Her words landed like a punch, and Victor's bravado cracked again, just for a heartbeat. He didn't step back, but his shoulders stiffened, his fists balling at his sides. The crowd watched, riveted, as the standoff stretched taut. A mother pulled her daughter closer, whispering to stay quiet. The air crackled with anticipation, every eye locked on the two figures at the gate. Victor's lips twisted into a sneer, his voice dropping to a growl. "You're nothing," he said, spitting the words. "A token hire with a shiny badge. I've got 25 years in the air. You think you can touch me? Go file your little report. I'll be flying circles around you by morning." He turned on his heel, striding toward the jet bridge, his boots thudding with purpose. The crowd parted for him, some shaking their heads, others staring at Nia with a mix of awe and pity. She stood rooted, her chest tight, watching him go. The gate agent scurried after him, clipboard in hand, casting a nervous glance back at Nia. She exhaled slowly, forcing her hands to unclench. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, an alert about boarding, but her mind was elsewhere. Victor's words echoed, each one a barb digging into her skin. Not because they hurt her pride, but because they confirmed what she'd feared. This wasn't just one man's ignorance. It was a symptom, a rot she'd sworn to uproot. She'd built her career on fairness, on making the skies safe for everyone, and here was a pilot spitting on that. Her fingers hovered over her phone, itching to call her team, to start the wheels turning. But she waited, letting the moment settle. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The boarding call crackled overhead, pulling her back to the present. Delta Flight 1423 to Chicago, now boarding Group 1. Nia grabbed her bag, rolling it toward the line forming at the gate. Passengers shuffled forward, some stealing glances at her, whispering about the scene they'd just witnessed. She kept her head high, her expression unreadable. Victor thought he'd won this round, banking on his union and his swagger to shield him. He had no idea who he'd just crossed. Nia wasn't just a passenger or a bureaucrat. She was the storm coming for him, and she'd make sure he felt every gust. As she handed her boarding pass to the agent, her lips curved into a faint, determined smile. Round 1 was his. Round 2 would be hers. Nia Jackson settled into seat 19B on Delta Flight 1423, the hum of the jet engines vibrating through the cabin as it taxied away from Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The July heat lingered in the air, a sticky warmth that clung to the worn blue upholstery despite the AC kicking in. She'd chosen coach deliberately, nestled near the wing for the smoothest ride, her carry-on stowed overhead. Her navy blazer hung neatly over her lap, a shield against the chaos she'd just faced. At the gate, the cabin buzzed with pre-flight energy. A businessman 2 rows up barked into his headset. A young girl across the aisle clutched a stuffed giraffe, her mother shushing her softly. Nia exhaled, forcing her shoulders to relax. She was still a passenger, still incognito, but her mind churned with Captain Victor Hargrove's venomous words. His racist tirade replayed in her head, each syllable a spark igniting her resolve. She pulled out her phone, fingers steady as she opened a secure FAA app. Time to dig into this pilot's past. The plane jolted slightly as it aligned with the runway, the seatbelt sign glowing amber overhead. Nia's screen lit up with Victor's file, her thumb scrolling through a career spanning 25 years. Born in Mobile, Alabama, ex-Air Force, joined Delta at 30. His record gleamed with flawless landings, clocking over 15,000 flight hours. But buried beneath the stats were complaints. 3 in the last decade, all dismissed. Rude to crew, one read. Dismissive of passenger concerns, said another. Union muscle had buried them, no doubt. Nia's lips pressed into a thin line. This wasn't new behavior. Victor had a pattern, and she'd just become his latest target. How many others had he bullied into silence? She tapped out a quick text to her assistant, Maya, in Chicago. Pull Hargrove's full history, complaints, audio logs, everything. Urgent. The plane's engines roared, thrusting her back into the seat as it lifted off, the Dallas skyline shrinking below. At 35,000 feet, the cabin settled into a restless hum. The seatbelt sign blinked off, and passengers shifted, stretching cramped legs. Nia leaned back, her mind racing. She'd grounded pilots before, but this felt personal. Victor's arrogance wasn't just a flaw, it was a weapon, sharpened by years of unchecked power. She glanced out the window, clouds stretching endless and white, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside her. The flight attendants rolled carts down the aisle, their smiles tight, offering pretzels and soda. Nia waved them off, her focus Elsewhere, she'd report him, yes, but she needed more than her word against his. Evidence was her armor, and she'd wield it like a blade. How deep did his rot go? 15 minutes later, the intercom crackled, jolting her from her thoughts. Victor's voice boomed through the cabin, thick with smugness. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Smooth skies ahead, but let's keep it that way. Some passengers think they run the show down there. Let's prove them wrong, huh?" A ripple of snickers rolled through first class, heads turning toward coach. Nia froze, her pulse spiking. He knew she was on board. How? A crew tip-off, maybe. Her anonymity was slipping, and he was flaunting it. The law student beside her, a lanky kid with dreads and a laptop, shot her a wide-eyed look. "That was weird, right?" he whispered. She nodded, her jaw tight. Victor wasn't just piloting, he was taunting her from the cockpit. The snickers faded, but the air felt heavier, charged with unspoken tension. Nia's fingers flew across her phone, adding Victor's announcement to her notes. Public humiliation on a packed flight, another nail in his coffin. She pictured him up front, smirking behind the controls, those 4 stripes on his shoulders, a crown he thought untouchable. Did he really believe he could mock her and walk away? She'd spent years climbing the FAA ranks, a black woman in a white man's world, proving her worth 10 times over. Victor's stunt at the gate was bad enough, but this? This was war. She typed faster, her anger fueling every word. "Hey, if you're raging at Victor's nerve right now, drop a number 1 in the comments. Think he's untouchable? Like this video, hit subscribe and stick around. Justice is coming hard." The plane droned on, the hum of conversation rising as passengers settled in. A baby wailed near the back, a sharp cry cutting through the noise. Nia's seatmate tapped away at his laptop, oblivious now, earbuds in. She glanced at her phone. Maya's. Reply pinged. "On it. Files incoming tonight." Good. She'd have ammo by morning. Victor's suspension was within her power, a single signature away, but she wanted it airtight. No loopholes, no union tricks. She leaned her head against the seat, imagining the hearing, his smug face crumpling as she read the charges. Victory felt close, her fingers itching to sign the order. Could she really end him this fast? Then the plane shuddered, a sudden lurch that rattled the overhead bins. Gasps erupted, cups tumbling from tray tables. Nia gripped her armrests, her stomach dropping as the jet dipped. The seatbelt sign flashed back on, red and urgent. Victor's voice returned, colder now, edged with irritation. "Folks, we've hit some choppy air. Nothing major, but stay seated. Seems some disruptive passengers jinxed us. Flight attendants, lock it down." The cabin stilled, eyes darting to the ceiling as if it might crack open. Nia's breath caught. Disruptive passengers? That was aimed at her, a jab twisted into a command. The law student yanked out an earbud, muttering, "What's his deal?" She didn't answer, her mind racing. He was pinning this on her, turning a routine bump into her fault. The turbulence smoothed out within seconds, the plane leveling. Off, but the damage was done. Passengers craned their necks, scanning the rows. A man in a polo shirt 3 seats up twisted around, his gaze landing on Nia with a scowl. "Keep it together back there," he snapped, loud enough for others to hear. A woman in a floral scarf nodded, her lips pursed. Nia's chest tightened, heat flushing her neck. They didn't know who she was, but Victor's words had painted a target. She sat straighter, refusing to shrink, but the stares burned. How had he flipped this so fast? The flight attendants scurried to their stations, abandoning their carts, their faces taut with unease. One, a young guy with a buzz cut, shot her an apologetic glance before looking away. Nia's phone buzzed again, Maya with a preview. 2 more complaints 2019, verbal abuse, suppressed. Her heart pounded. This was gold. She could bury him with this, prove a pattern no union could dodge. But the cabin's mood shifted, darker. A teenage girl across the aisle whispered to her dad, pointing subtly at Nia. "Is she the one he meant?" The dad shrugged, but his eyes lingered, suspicious. Victor's voice had sown doubt, turning her into the villain. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. He was good. Too good. Twisting the narrative from 35,000 feet. Did he think this would scare her off? The plane hummed steady now, the turbulence a memory. But the lockdown held. No drinks, no movement, just a tense silence broken by rustling bags and muffled coughs. Nia's evidence was piling up, each piece a brick in the wall she'd build against him. She pictured the FAA board, their nods as she laid out his history. Suspension wasn't enough. She'd push for revocation if she could. But Victor's stunt had shifted the game. He wasn't just mocking her. He was rallying the cabin against her, leveraging their fear into his power. How far would he take this? She stared at the seat back in front of her, the tray table still up, her reflection, faint in the plastic. She'd won battles like this before, outsmarted bigger egos. But this felt different, rawer, more personal. The law student shifted beside her, pulling out his other earbud. "Dude's got issues," he said, voice low. "You okay?" Nia forced a small smile, nodding. "I've handled worse," she said, though her gut twisted. She had the upper hand, her title, her evidence, but Victor's move had rattled her more than she'd admit. The cabin's glares lingered, a silent jury swayed by his words. She typed one last note. Intercom taunt, 6:42 p.m. CST witnessed. Her finger hovered over the send button, then pressed it. This was war, and she'd fight it her way. But as the plane droned toward Chicago, a chill crept up her spine. What else was Victor hiding up there? Hey, if Victor's slimy power play has you boiling, smash that like button and subscribe for the payback he's got coming. Comment number 1 if you think Nia's about to crush him, or number 2 if you're worried he's got more tricks up his sleeve. This is getting wild and you won't believe what's next. Picture this. Nia's got the dirt to ground him, but Victor's smirking behind that cockpit door. What's he planning to hit her with before they land? Stick around to find out. The cabin of Delta Flight 1423 hummed at 35,000 feet, a deceptive calm settling over the rows of passengers as the jet sliced through the night sky toward Chicago. Nia Jackson sat rigid in seat 19B, her navy blazer draped over her, knees like a shield, her mind a battlefield. The turbulence had faded, but Captain Victor Hargrove's venomous intercom jab still echoed in her ears, turning the cabin's eyes against her. She'd caught the glares, the whispers, the way a guy in a baseball cap 2 rows up kept glancing back, his brow furrowed like she'd personally rocked the plane. Her phone sat dark in her lap, its battery drained from texting Maya, but her laptop rested in her bag, a lifeline to nail Victor. She pulled it out, balancing it on the narrow tray table, the screen's glow casting sharp shadows across her face. Time to draft the FAA complaint that'd bury him. The law student beside her, Jamal, tapped away at his own device, earbuds back in, oblivious to her mission. Across the aisle, a woman in a green sweater knitted furiously, her needles clicking like a countdown. Nia's fingers danced over the keys, typing out the incident at the gate. Victor's racial slurs, the crowd's gasps, her badge reveal. She added his intercom taunt, time-stamped at 6:42 p.m. Central Standard Time, every word seared into her memory. Some passengers think they run the show. She snorted softly, the sound lost in the engine's drone. He'd mocked her. Authority turned a packed flight into his stage. Her report grew, detailing his files buried complaints, a pattern of arrogance and abuse stretching back years. She pictured the FAA board's faces, their nods as she'd present this, Victor's career crumbling under the weight of her words. Her chest swelled with grim satisfaction. She had him. The drink cart rattled closer, pushed by a flight attendant with short black hair and a nervous smile. "Water? Coffee?" she asked, her voice tight, eyes darting toward the cockpit. Nia glanced up, nodding for coffee, needing the jolt. The attendant, maybe 25, poured it quick, her hands unsteady. As she handed over the paper cup, her elbow jerked, and scalding liquid splashed across Nia's laptop. Keys hissed, the screen flickered, then went black. Nia yanked it back, shaking off the drips, but the damage was done. Smoke curled from the side, a faint, acrid scent hitting her nose. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," the attendant gasped, her face paling, hands fumbling for napkins. Jamal pulled out an earbud, staring wide-eyed. "Yo, that's messed up," he muttered. Nia's heart sank, her fingers hovering over the ruined machine, her draft, her evidence gone in a heartbeat. She forced a breath, keeping her voice steady. "It's fine. Accidents happen." But her gut screamed otherwise. The attendant's eyes flicked toward the cockpit again. A quick, panicked glance that betrayed her. Nia's mind raced. Victor. He'd sent her, hadn't he? A clumsy sabotage masked as a slip. She wiped the keyboard with a napkin, but it was useless, the screen dead, her work erased. The attendant stammered apologies, piling napkins on the tray, then bolted back up the aisle, her cart rattling louder than before. Nia's jaw clenched, heat rising in her chest. He'd struck again, and she hadn't seen it coming. Minutes later, the intercom crackled, Victor's voice slithering through the cabin like oil. "Folks, we've got some technical issues back there thanks to unruly behavior. Stay seated, keep it calm. We'll sort it out." His tone dripped with smugness, a veiled gloat aimed straight at her. Passengers shifted, heads turning, the guy in the baseball cap muttering figures loud enough to sting. Nia's blood boiled. Technical issues? He meant her laptop, twisting her loss into his narrative. She caught a glimpse of him through the cockpit door, propped open just enough to show his silver hair. His head tilted back in a laugh. He thought he'd won this round, crippled her fight before it hit the ground. She slammed the tray table up, the thud drawing Jamal's stare. "He's playing dirty," she whispered, more to herself than him. Enough was enough. Nia unbuckled her seatbelt, ignoring the amber sign still lit, and stood, her 5'7" frame steady despite the jet's faint sway. She marched up the aisle, dodging a kid's sprawled legs and a woman's oversized purse, her pulse pounding in her ears. The cockpit door loomed ahead, Victor's laugh cutting off as she approached. She stopped at the threshold, the co-pilot glancing up from his controls, a wiry guy with glasses who froze mid-motion. Victor swiveled in his seat, his blue eyes narrowing, lips curling into that familiar sneer. "Can I help you, princess?" he said, voice low, taunting. The co-pilot shifted uncomfortably, hands hovering over the panel. "You're out of line," Nia said, her tone steel, loud enough for the first-class rouse to hear. Heads turned, a hush rippling back. "That coffee spill? You're doing. And your announcements? Harassment. I'm reporting you, Hargrove, and you won't wriggle out of this." Her words landed hard, each one a brick in the wall she'd rebuild. Victor's sneer faltered, then hardened, his face flushing red. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough she could see the veins in his neck bulge. "You've got no proof," he snapped. "Just a fried laptop and a big mouth. Sit down before you embarrass yourself more." Nia didn't flinch, her stare locked on his. "I don't need the laptop. I've got witnesses, your voice on tape, and a file full of your dirt. You're done." Her heart hammered, but her voice stayed steady, cutting through his bravado. The co-pilot coughed, eyes darting between them, clearly out of his depth. Victor's smirk returned, thinner now, forced. "Witnesses? Good luck with that. You're the troublemaker here, sweetheart. Ask the crew." He nodded toward the galley where the nervous attendant hovered, her face pale as chalk. Nia's gut twisted. He'd scared them into line, hadn't he? She took a step closer, voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You think you're untouchable? I run the FAA. One call and you're grounded. Keep pushing me and see how fast you fall." Victor's eyes widened, a flicker of doubt breaking through his mask. He opened his mouth, but she cut him off, turning sharp on her heel and striding back. First-class passengers gawked, a woman in pearls clutching her wine glass tighter, a man in a suit whispering to his seatmate. Nia's legs trembled, but she kept her head high, reclaiming her seat with a thud. Jamal yanked out both earbuds now, staring. "You just went at the pilot? That's insane." "He started it," Nia said, her breath short, adrenaline surging. She'd thrown down the gauntlet, and Victor knew it. But as she settled back, the intercom buzzed again, Victor's voice colder than ever. "Ground control. This is Delta 1423. "We've got an aggressive passenger on board, possible threat, requesting security on arrival." The cabin erupted, in murmurs, heads snapping toward her. The guy in the baseball cap stood halfway, glaring. "You kidding me?" he barked. The woman with the knitting dropped a needle, her mouth agape. Nia's stomach plummeted. He'd flipped it, framed her as the danger, and now cops would be waiting. She gripped her armrests, knuckles whitening. Victor had radioed ahead, turning her stand into his trap. The co-pilot's silence rang in her ears. He'd let it happen, spineless. The flight attendants avoided her gaze, scurrying to secure the galley as the plane began its descent. Outside, clouds parted, Chicago's lights flickering into view, a city oblivious to the war unfolding above. Nia's mind raced. She'd lost her laptop, her draft, but not her power. She could call Maya from the tarmac, pull strings, turn this around. Victor thought he'd cornered her, but he'd miscalculated. She wasn't just a passenger. She was the FAA's top gun, and she'd fight with everything she had. The plane dipped, engines whining as it sank toward O'Hare. Passengers stowed, bags, their whispers growing louder, pinning her with blame. "She's why we're late," a voice hissed from behind. Nia ignored it, her focus narrowing. Victor's voice stayed silent now, but his move pulsed through the cabin, a noose tightening. She'd face security, sure, but she'd flip it back on him. Her badge, her title, her resolve. They'd outweigh his lies. The wheels screeched against the runway, a jolt shaking the jet, and Nia braced herself. He'd set her up, but she'd walk off this plane ready to strike. The real battle was just starting, and she'd make him regret ever crossing her path. The wheels of Delta Flight 1423 screeched to a halt at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, the cabin lurching as the jet settled at the gate. Outside, the July night pressed against the windows, a humid 82 degrees Fahrenheit cloaking, the tarmac in a hazy glow. Nia Jackson sat stiff in seat 19B, her navy blazer crumpled in her lap, her dead laptop stowed in her bag like a fallen soldier. The cabin buzzed with restless energy, passengers unbuckling seatbelts and grabbing bags, their whispers sharp with irritation. "Finally," a woman in a red tank top muttered, shoving past her seatmate. Nia's pulse thudded in her ears. Victor, Hargrove's last intercom stunt replaying. Aggressive passenger, possible threat. She knew security waited beyond the jet bridge. His trap sprung tight. Her fingers tightened around her armrests, but her face stayed calm, a mask forged. From years of battling bigger storms, the plane's door hissed open, and a wave of humid air rolled in, thick with jet fuel and summer sweat. Nia stood, rolling her carry-on behind her, her steps deliberate as she joined the shuffling line. Jamal, the law student beside her, slung, his backpack over one shoulder, shooting her a quick nod. "Good luck out there," he said, his voice low, eyes flicking toward the exit. She managed a tight smile, but her focus sharpened on the gate ahead. Passengers streamed past, some casting sidelong glares, others avoiding her entirely. The guy in the baseball cap from row 17 brushed by, muttering, "Troublemaker," under his breath. She ignored it, her mind locked on Victor. He'd framed her, turned a flight into his chessboard, but she wasn't checkmated yet. At the jet bridge's end, two cops loomed, their navy uniforms crisp, badges glinting under the terminal's harsh lights. One, a stocky man with a buzz cut, stepped forward, hand resting on his radio. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," he said, voice flat but firm. The other, taller with a graying mustache, scanned her with narrowed eyes. A cluster of passengers slowed, rubbernecking, phones slipping out to record. Nia stopped, her bag's wheels squeaking to a halt, and straightened to her full 5 feet 7 inches. "On what grounds?" she asked, her tone cool, cutting through the murmurs. The stocky cop shifted, glancing at his partner. "Report of a disruptive passenger. We're detaining you for questioning." Nia's chest tightened, Victor's smirk flashing in her mind, but she didn't waver. She reached into her blazer pocket, pulling out her FAA badge, the gold seal catching the light. "I'm Nia Jackson, Director of the Federal Aviation Authority," she said, holding it steady, her voice rising just enough to carry. "Your report came from Captain Victor Hargrove, the pilot. He's the one you should be questioning." The cops froze, the badge a grenade in their hands. The taller one squinted at it, then at her, his mustache twitching. Passengers gasped, a ripple of shock spreading. "She's who?" a woman in flip-flops whispered, her phone dipping. The stocky cop's hand dropped from his radio, uncertainty, cracking his stance. "Check it," Naya said, nodding at the badge. "Call your supervisor if you need to. I'm not the threat here." The taller cop took it, flipping it over, then muttered into his shoulder mic. The crowd thickened, a teenage girl in a hoodie elbowing closer, eyes wide. Nia stood rooted, her heart pounding but her expression stone. She'd faced down worse, boardroom skeptics, racist landlords, cops before. But this was public, raw, a test of her title's weight. The stocky cop shifted, glancing at the jet bridge where Victor emerged, his silver hair glinting, his stride cocky as he approached the gate agent. He spotted her, his smirk widening, assuming she'd crumble. The radio crackled, and the taller cop's face tightened. "Dispatch confirms. She's legit," he said, handing back the badge. "Sorry, ma'am. You're free to go." The stocky one stepped aside, his jaw clenched, clearly rattled. Nia slipped the badge back into her pocket, her shoulders easing slightly. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady, though her pulse still raced. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some clapping, others filming faster. "That's right!" A man in a Bears jersey shouted, pumping a fist. Victor's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing as he clocked the shift. Nia met his stare, unflinching, and rolled her bag past the cops, the terminal swallowing her into its chaos. She moved fast, weaving through the throng, her mind already leaping ahead. Victor stood by the gate podium, chatting with a Delta rep in a blue blazer, his laugh loud, forced. Nia paused near a coffee stand, 50 feet away, watching. He thought he'd bluffed his way out, banking on his union and his swagger. She pulled out her phone, now charged enough from a portable pack, and dialed Maya. "It's me," she said, voice low. "Hargrove tried to frame me with security. Cops backed off when I showed my badge. I need an emergency order to ground. Him now?" Maya's typing clacked through the line. "Got his file already. Sending the draft. Sign it digitally. It'll hit Delta in 10. Naya's lips curved, a faint victory blooming. She opened the email, scanning the order. "Captain Victor Hargrove, suspended pending investigation, effective immediately." Her thumb hovered over the signature field, then pressed. Sent. She glanced up, catching Victor's eye as he turned from the rep. His phone buzzed, and he pulled it out, his face hardening as he read. The Delta rep's eyes widened, stepping back, her clipboard trembling. Victor's head snapped up, locking onto Nia, fury twisting his features. She held his gaze, unflinching, as cheers broke out behind her. "About time," a woman with a stroller yelled. "He was a jerk up there," the Bears jersey guy added, clapping. For a moment, Nia felt it. Triumph, pure and sharp. Victor was grounded, his wings clipped. By her hand, passengers who'd seen his gate rant and heard his intercom jabs rallied around her, their voices a chorus of support. A teenage boy in a backward cap high-fived his friend, grinning at her. She exhaled, the weight lifting, her authority flexing, like muscle. She'd turned his setup into her win, flipped his game on its head. The terminal buzzed with life, travelers streaming past, oblivious to the war she'd just fought and won. She rolled her bag toward the exit, ready to call it a night, her son's face flashing in her mind. Home was close now, then her phone rang, shattering the glow. "Nia, it's Tom." Her FAA legal counsel's voice crackled, urgent. "Hargrove's union just filed a defamation suit against you. Claims you're targeting him with racial bias. Says you're punishing a white pilot for doing his job. They're pushing hard and it's already leaking online." Nia stopped dead, the terminal's noise fading to a dull roar. Her stomach dropped, victory souring in her throat. She turned, spotting Victor across the concourse, now huddled with a man in a gray suit, his lawyer, no doubt. He smirked again, a predator baring teeth, phone pressed to his ear. The Delta rep scurried away, head down. Nia's grip tightened, on her phone, knuckles whitening. Defamation? Racial bias against him? The audacity twisted her gut, a knife of irony cutting deep. She'd just proven her power, grounded him with a stroke, and now he'd flipped the script, weaponizing the system she'd mastered. The crowd's cheers faded, replaced by a creeping dread. She'd won the battle, but he'd opened a new front, one that could smear her name, her career. "Tom, how bad is it?" she asked, voice steady despite the storm inside. "Bad," he said. "They've got a press release ready. Blogs are picking it up. We need to counter fast." She nodded, though he couldn't see, her mind racing. Victor broke from his lawyer, striding toward the crew exit, his swagger intact. He tossed her one last glance, a promise of war in his eyes, then vanished through a glass door. Nia stood frozen, the terminal spinning around her, suitcases rolling, announcements blaring, a kid spilling juice 10 feet away. Her triumph had been real, fleeting, a mirage shattered by his counterstrike. She'd grounded him, yes, but he'd turned her victory into a liability, accusing her of the very prejudice he'd wielded. Her chest heaved, anger warring with strategy. She'd beat him again. She had to. But this was bigger now, messier. She rolled her bag forward, steps heavy, the exit lights beckoning. The suit was a bluff, a desperate swing, but it stung. Her name, her integrity dangled in the crosshairs. She'd call Tom back, rally her team, fight this in court if needed. Victor thought he'd rattled her, but he'd misjudged her spine. She'd built her life on outlasting men like him, and she'd do it again. The glass doors slid open, Chicago's humid night swallowing her whole, but her mind stayed sharp. This wasn't over, not even close. He'd swung back, but she'd swing harder. The real reckoning was coming, and she'd be ready. Nia Jackson strode into the FAA's Chicago office 2 days after landing, the July heat still clinging to the city like a damp towel, pushing the temperature to a sticky 87 degrees Fahrenheit. The building's glass facade loomed over, Michigan Avenue, its air-conditioned lobby a sharp relief from the muggy streets. She wore a tailored gray suit today, her braids pulled tight, her heels clicking against the marble floor with purpose. Her carry-on from the flight sat unpacked. At home, her son safe with her sister, but Victor Hargrove's defamation suit gnawed at her like a splinter. She'd grounded him, clipped his wings with a single signature, and now he'd turned the tables, accusing her of racial bias against him. The irony burned, but she'd fight it. She always did. Her office on the 10th floor awaited, a war room for the battle ahead. The elevator dinged, and she stepped into a flurry of activity. Analysts hustled between cubicles, phones buzzing, screens glowing with flight data. Maya, her assistant, met her at the door, a stack of files under one arm, her curly hair pinned back. "Morning, boss," Maya said, voice clipped, handing over a tablet. Hargrove's suspensions locked in. Delta complied overnight. Crew testimonies are rolling in too. Nia nodded, scanning the screen as she walked. Joshua, a flight attendant from the Dallas-Chicago run, had emailed. "He berated me mid-flight, called me useless in front of passengers." Another, a woman named Claire, wrote, "Victor threatened to dock my pay if I served during turbulence. He exaggerated. Solid gold." Nia's lips twitched upward. She'd bury him with this, prove his pattern beyond doubt. Her office overlooked Lake Michigan, the water a shimmering blue under the morning sun. She dropped into her chair, the leather creaking, and spread the files across her desk. Victor's history stared back. 25 years of pristine flights. Yes, but a trail of complaints swept under the rug. She'd present this to the FAA board tomorrow, push his suspension into permanence. Her fingers tapped the desk, adrenaline buzzing. She'd won round 1 at O'Hare, turned his security trap into her triumph. This would be round 2, and she'd hit harder. But as she typed notes, her phone pinged. A text from Tom, her legal counsel. "Check X, now." Her stomach tightened, a cold prickle running up her spine. She opened the app, and there it was. A video, grainy but damning, posted by an anonymous account with 10,000 views already. It showed her confrontation, with Victor in the cockpit, her voice sharp, his smug but edited to twist the truth. Her words, "You're done," came out clipped, menacing, while his pleas for calm were looped, making him the victim. The caption screamed, "FAA tyrant threatens veteran pilot over nothing." Comments exploded below. Reverse racism at its finest. She's power tripping. White guy can't catch a break. Nia's breath caught, her chest constricting. He doctored it, turned her stand into a smear, and the internet lapped it up. How had he gotten this so fast? Her office door swung open, Maya rushing in, eyes wide. "Protesters outside," she said, pointing to the window. Nia stood, peering down. A dozen people milled on the sidewalk, signs bobbing. "Justice for Hargrove. FAA corruption." One, a burly man in a trucker hat, shouted through a megaphone, his voice faint but clear. "She's a fraud. A black bully with a badge." Racial slurs peppered his rant, raw and unfiltered, drawing nods from the crowd. Nia's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. Victor hadn't just sued her. He'd unleashed a mob, flipped her victory into a public lynching. Her phone buzzed again. "Tom. Blogs are running with it. We're prepping a response." She nodded to herself, rage simmering beneath her calm. She sat back down, forcing her breathing to steady, and opened her laptop. The new one, rushed in by IT after the coffee disaster. The FAA hearing loomed, and she wouldn't let this derail her. She finalized the suspension report, attaching Joshua's and Claire's statements, her fingers flying over the keys. Victor's license hung by a thread and she'd snap it. She hit send, the email pinging to the board, and leaned back, exhaling. The clock read 11 a.m. She'd done it. He was grounded longer now, a year at least, pending review. She pictured his face, that smug smirk wiped clean when Delta called him. She'd won again, hadn't she? Then glass shattered, a deafening crash that jolted her upright. A brick sailed through her window, smashing the pane into a spiderweb of cracks, landing on her desk with a thud, papers scattered, her coffee mug toppled, dark liquid pooling over her files. She ducked instinctively, heart slamming against her ribs, as shouts rose from below. Maya yelped, diving behind a chair. Nia scrambled to the brick, her hands shaking. As she flipped it over, a note taped to it read, scrawled in black marker, "You're next." No signature, but she knew. Victor. His mob had escalated from words to weapons, and her office, her sanctuary, was a target. She stood, glass crunching under her heels, and peered out the broken window. The protesters cheered. The trucker, hat guy pumping a fist, others filming with glee. Security swarmed below, barking orders, but the damage was done. Nia's throat tightened, fear warring with fury. She'd suspended him, yes, but at what cost? Her triumph at O'Hare, her boardroom strike, they'd morphed into this, a violent backlash she hadn't foreseen. Maya crept up, pale, clutching, her phone. "Cops are coming," she said, voice trembling. Nia nodded, her mind racing. She'd call Tom, tighten security, push the hearing harder. Victor thought he'd scare her off, but he'd misjudged her steel. The office buzzed with panic now, staff peering in, whispering. Nia straightened her suit, brushing glass from her sleeve, and grabbed her phone. She dialed Tom, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Brick through my window. Note says you're next. It's Hargrove's people. We need to move fast, counter the video, secure the building." Tom cursed softly. "On it. Stay put. I'm sending backup." She hung up, turning to Maya. "Get it to pull that video's metadata. I want proof it's fake." Maya nodded, darting out, leaving Nia alone with the wreckage. She sank into her chair, the leather cold against her back, and stared at the brick. Victor hadn't just sued her. He'd weaponized the public, turned her authority into a target. The protesters' chants drifted up, a dull roar through the shattered glass. Down with Jackson. Her suspension had hit him hard, but this was his counterpunch, brutal and public. She'd won the legal round, grounded his plane, but he'd grounded her peace, her safety. Her son's face flashed in her mind, 14, at home with her sister, oblivious to this war. What if they went after him next? Sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights flashing across the street as cops arrived, dispersing the crowd. Nia's phone lit up with alerts, blogs doubling down. FAA director's vendetta sparks violence. Hargrove's fight for justice. Lies. All of it. But they stuck. Mud on her name. She clenched her jaw, resolve hardening. She'd fight this, too. Court, press, mob. Victor thought he'd broken her, but he'd lit a fire. She'd expose his fake video, his threats, his rot. The hearing tomorrow would be her stage, and she'd make him pay. Hey, if Victor's dirty smear has you fuming, smash that like button and subscribe to see him crash and burn. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you're rooting for Nia to crush this creep, or number 2 if you think his mob's gone too far already. This guy's playing filthy, turning her win into a nightmare. Imagine this. Nia's got him suspended, but now her office is trashed. Her life's on the line. What's Victor unleashing next to keep her down? Stay tuned. This war's heating up fast. Rain lashed against the windows of Nia Jackson's Chicago home, a modest 2-story brick house on the south side. The July storm turning the night into a blur of gray and thunder. Inside, the living room glowed with the flicker of a single lamp, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Nia sat on her couch, still in her gray suit from the office, the hem damp from her dash through the downpour. Her son, Malik, slept upstairs, safe with her sister Tanya, who'd crashed on the guest bed after a late shift. The brick through. Her office window still haunted her, its jagged edges etched in her mind. The note. You're next. A splinter under her skin. Victor Hargrove's mob had struck, but she'd strike back harder. Her laptop hummed on the coffee table, open to FAA emails, her fingers poised to rally her team. Lightning cracked outside, illuminating the room in stark white, and Nia's phone buzzed beside her. It was Tom, her legal counsel, his voice tight through the line. Board set for tomorrow, 9 a.m. Your suspension order's solid, but the defamation suit's gaining traction. We need allies. FAA brass. Anyone with pull. Nia nodded, though he couldn't see, her mind already mapping the fight. She'd spent the day after the brick incident locking down security, moving Malik to Tanya's place for the night, and prepping her case. Victor's fake video had spread like wildfire online, painting her as a tyrant, but she had truth on her side. She typed a message to her deputy, Carl Simmons, a wiry 50-year-old she'd trusted for years. Need you at the hearing. Back me up. Hargrove's unhinged. Carl's reply pinged fast. Got it. I'll be there. Relief washed through her, a rare soft spot in the chaos. Carl had her back, always had. His quiet loyalty a rock since she'd taken the FAA helm. She leaned back, exhaling. The storm's roar a dull pulse against her resolve. She'd rally more. Joshua and Claire from the flight, FAA analysts, even Delta insiders if she could swing it. Victor's suspension was a start, but she'd push for revocation, end his career for good. Her eyes flicked to the clock. 10 p.m. Sleep tugged at her, but she fought it, drafting emails, plotting moves. She'd win this, brick or no brick. The next morning, Nia stood outside the FAA hearing room downtown. The storm cleared, leaving a muggy 85-degree haze over Chicago. She'd swapped her suit for a sharp black blazer and slacks, her braids swept into a high bun, her face a mask of steel. Reporters swarmed the steps, mics thrusting forward, cameras flashing. "Ms. Jackson, is this a personal vendetta?" one shouted. She ignored them, pushing through to the lobby, Carl at her side in a pinstripe suit, his gray eyes calm. "You've got this," he muttered, clapping her shoulder. She nodded, grateful. Her laptop bag heavy with evidence, crew statements, Victor's file, the works. The hearing would be her stage, and she'd play it flawless. But unease gnawed at her as she entered the press conference room an hour later, a last-minute briefing before the board. The space hummed with tension, reporters packed shoulder to shoulder, their notepads out, phones recording. Nia took the podium, her voice steady as she laid out Victor's suspension. Captain Hargrove's actions, harassment, racial bias, threats, violate FAA standards. We've acted decisively. Questions flew. Why target him? Is this about race? And she parried each. her evidence a shield. Carl stood nearby, nodding, her anchor. Then the room shifted, a ripple of gasps as Victor stormed in, uninvited, his silver hair wild, his Delta uniform swapped for a wrinkled shirt and tie. He clutched a stack of papers, his face flushed with rage. "She's lying!" Victor bellowed, shoving through the crowd, his voice cutting the air like a blade. "This woman's abused her power, framed me with fake charges. Look at this." He slammed his papers on a table, pages spilling, emails, screenshots, all doctored to show Nia plotting against him.
"She's got insiders feeding her lies!" The room erupted, reporters scribbling, cameras zooming. Nia's heart sank, her eyes darting to Carl. He'd gone pale, his hands fidgeting, avoiding her gaze. A chill gripped her. Victor pointed at him, grinning viciously.
"Ask her deputy. He knows the truth. She's out to ruin me." Nia's breath caught, the room spinning. Carl, her rock, her ally. She turned to him, voice low, urgent. "Tell them he's full of it, Carl. Back me up." But he stepped back, his jaw tight, eyes on the floor. I gave him some info," he muttered, barely audible. "Airline execs leaned on me. I didn't think he'd twist it like this." The confession hit like a punch, betrayal searing through her. Reporters surged, shouting, "Deputy admits leak." Victor's grin widened, triumphant, as boos rang out, aimed at her. Nia's knees buckled, but she caught herself, gripping the podium, her mind racing. Carl had sold her out, handed Victor ammunition mid-fight. She straightened, fury igniting her voice. "Wait," she said, loud enough to silence the chaos. "Carl, you're saying you leaked my strategy? Live right now, tell them who pressured you." Cameras swiveled to him, his face crumpling under the glare. "Delta brass," he stammered, sweat beading on his brow. "They wanted Hargrove protected." "I didn't mean—" Nia cut him off, turning to the crowd. "There's your truth. Hargrove's got corporate puppets pulling strings, faking evidence. I've got witnesses, recordings, real proof. Judge that." A murmur rippled through, some nodding, others skeptical, but she'd flipped it, wrested back a sliver of trust. Victor's grin faded, his eyes narrowing, but he stayed silent, cornered for a heartbeat. She stormed out, leaving Carl to the wolves, her heels echoing down the hall. The parking lot loomed ahead, the humid air thick as she reached her car, a black sedan parked under a flickering streetlight. She slid in, slamming the door, her breath ragged. She'd won the room, sort of, turned Carl's betrayal into her ammo, but the victory felt hollow. Victor had her playbook now, her moves exposed. She started the engine, tires squealing as she pulled out, the city blurring past. Lightning flashed in the distance, a new storm brewing, and then it happened. A deafening boom shook the night, her rearview mirror flaring orange. Her car exploded behind her, parked where she'd stood moments ago, flames licking the sky. Nia swerved, tires screeching, her heart hammering as she floored it down the street. Glass and metal rained across the lot, smoke billowing thick and black. She gripped the wheel, knuckles white, her mind a whirlwind. Victor. It had to be him. His "your next note" now a reality. She'd escaped by seconds, pure luck, but the blast shattered her world. Her office window, now her car. He wasn't just smearing her, he was hunting her. She pulled over a block away, hands trembling, and dialed Tom. "My car just blew up," she said, voice shaking but sharp. "Hargrove's behind it. Get the cops now." Sirens wailed in the distance, red and blue lights cutting through the haze as she sat, rain pelting her windshield. Carl's face flashed, his guilt, his cowardice, followed by Victor's sneer, his papers, his bomb. She'd rallied the press, turned his leak into her weapon, but this was beyond legal games. Her son, her sister, her life, they were targets now. The cops screeched up, flashlights sweeping, voices barking orders. Nia stepped out, rain soaking her blazer, her resolve hardening. She'd won a skirmish, regained some ground, but Victor had escalated to murder. She'd fight him on this turf too, no matter the cost. He'd misjudged her again, thinking she'd break. She wouldn't. Not ever. The officer approached, a broad-shouldered woman with a notepad, rain streaking her cap. "Ms. Jackson, you okay?" Nia nodded, wiping water from her face. "It's Hargrove. He's trying to kill me." The cop's eyes widened, scribbling fast. Nia's phone buzzed. Tom. Police en route. Stay safe. We'll nail him. She pocketed it, staring at the burning wreckage, flames dancing in the storm. Victor had lost the hearing, lost his wings, but he'd turned her life into a battlefield. She'd survive this, outsmart him again. But the war had shifted. Darker. Deadlier. She climbed back into her borrowed car, the engine rumbling, ready to fight another day. Dawn broke over Chicago, a faint pink streaking the sky as rain from the night storm dripped off the eaves of the Southside police station. Nia Jackson sat in a hard plastic chair, her gray suit soaked and streaked with soot, her braids fraying at the edges. The car explosion still echoed in her bones, the fireball's heat a ghost on her skin. She'd survived by seconds, fleeing the parking lot in a borrowed sedan, her heart pounding as cops swarmed the wreckage. Now, at 6 a.m., the station buzzed with early shift chaos, phones ringing, officers shuffling reports, a coffee machine gurgling in the corner. Her hands gripped a styrofoam cup, the brew inside cold and bitter, but she barely noticed. Victor Hargrove had tried to kill her, and she'd nail him for it. The officer from last night, Sergeant Lopez, a broad-shouldered woman with sharp brown eyes, approached with a notepad. "We've got the fire crew on it," she said, voice steady. "Looks like a crude bomb. Gasoline. Timer. No prints yet, but we're pulling CCTV." Nia nodded, her jaw tight. "It's Hargrove," she said, her tone flat, certain. "The brick through my office window had a note. You're next. This is him." Lopez scribbled, her pen scratching, loud in the quiet. "We'll look into it, Ms. Jackson. You're safe here. Any enemies besides him?" Nia's lips twitched, a humorless smirk. "Not ones who'd blow up my car." Lopez nodded, stepping away to radio updates, leaving Nia alone with her thoughts. She replayed the night, Carl's betrayal at the press conference, her counterstrike, the explosion. Victor had lost his wings, his defamation suit flailing so he'd gone lethal. Her phone, charged now, buzzed with a text from Tom. "Cops have the scene. FAA's locking down your office. Stay put." She pocketed it, her mind racing. She'd survived, yes, but Malik, her son, was still with Tanya, safe for now. She'd fight this, turn Victor's attack into his noose, but exhaustion tugged at her, a heavy fog she shook off. Footsteps approached, heavier this time, and she looked up to see two new cops, both white, both grim-faced. One, a barrel-chested man with a buzz cut, held handcuffs. "Nia Jackson?" he barked, his voice rough, cutting through the station's hum. She straightened, unease prickling her spine. "Yes?" The other, leaner with a scar on his cheek, stepped forward. "You're under arrest, suspicion of arson and attempted insurance fraud." The words hit like a slap, her cup slipping, coffee splashing across the floor. "What?" she said, standing, her voice rising. "My car blew up. I'm the victim." The buzz-cut cop grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her, the cuffs clicking cold against her wrists. "Evidence says you rigged it, staged it for sympathy. Let's go." The station stilled, officers glancing over, Lopez frowning from the desk but saying nothing. Nia's mind spun as they hauled her toward a holding room, her heels scraping. The tile. Staged it? Sympathy? This was Victor, flipping her survival into his frame-up. The lean cop shoved her into a chair, a metal table between them, the room stark with fluorescent light and a one-way mirror. "We've got bomb fragments. Matching stuff in your garage," he said, tossing photos on the table. "Gas cans, wires, her address scrawled on a receipt. Witness saw you tinkering last week." Nia stared, her stomach dropping, planted. All of it. "That's a lie," she said, voice steady despite the cuffs biting her skin. "Hargrove's behind this. Check his union ties. Your witness is bought." The buzz-cut cop snorted, leaning in, his breath sour with tobacco. "You're grasping, lady. FAA big shot thinks she's above the law? We've got you cold." Nia's eyes narrowed, fury simmering. Victor's reach stretched deeper than she'd thought. Cops in his pocket. Evidence faked overnight. She'd survived his bomb, so he'd buried her in lies instead. "Call my counsel," she said, her tone ice. "Tom Reynolds, FAA legal. I'm not saying another word." The lean cop smirked, but Buzzcut nodded, stepping out, leaving her alone with the photos, the room's hum pressing against her ears. She sat, wrists aching, mind racing. Victor had planned this, turned her escape into his checkmate. The garage stuff? Her house was clean. She'd never touched a gas can beyond lawn mowing. Someone had staged it, slipped it in while she'd been at work or fleeing the blast. Union muscle maybe, or Delta cronies Carl had ratted to. She'd trusted Carl, and he'd cracked, giving Victor her moves. Now this. Her chest tightened, but she forced it down, focusing. She'd beat this. Too, her title, her clout, they'd pull her out. The door swung open, Tom bursting in, his tie askew, face flushed. "Nia, what the hell? They're saying you bombed your own car." "Victor," she said, leaning forward, cuffs clanking. "He's framing me. Planted evidence, paid off cops. I need bail fast and an FAA counter-investigation." Tom nodded, scribbling on a legal pad. "I'll push it through. Your badge still carries weight. Judge'll see reason." He darted out, and within an hour, she was free. The cuffs off, her wrists red but her spine straight. She walked out into the morning haze, 88 degrees now, her borrowed sedan, waiting. Tom climbed in beside her, briefing fast. "Cops are shaky. Union ties run deep here. I've got FAA pulling strings. We'll trace this back." Nia nodded, starting the engine, her hands steady despite the tremor inside. She'd dodged jail, flipped Victor's frame up for now, but he wasn't done. As they pulled onto the street, her phone rang, a burner number, the voice unmistakable. Victor's growl slithered through. "Nice try, Jackson. You'll never fly again. Not you, not your precious FAA. I'm just getting started." The line clicked dead, her blood running, cold. She gripped the wheel, glancing at Tom, who'd heard it too. "He's unhinged," Tom said, voice low. "We'll nail him with that." Nia nodded, her mind already working. She'd trace the call, turn his threat into her weapon. He thought. He'd caged her, but she'd break free, strike back. They hit a red light, the city waking around them, cars honking, a CTA bus rumbling past. Nia's resolve hardened, her survival fueling her fight. She'd launch a counter-investigation, dig into his union, expose the cops. Her phone buzzed again, this time Tanya, her sister, her voice shrill. "Nia, Malik's school just called. He's gone. Left class an hour ago. No one's seen him." The world tilted, her breath catching, the light turning green unnoticed. Tom grabbed her shoulder, steadying her. "What?" she choked out, tires squealing as she floored it toward the school. "He was fine this morning. I dropped him off. Myself," Tanya said near tears. "Cops are there now." Nia's heart slammed against her ribs, the sedan weaving through traffic, horns blaring. Malik, 14, her world, missing after Victor's call. This wasn't coincidence. He'd taken her son, escalated beyond bombs to her soul. "Victor," she hissed, her voice breaking, eyes burning with rage. Tom dialed the police, barking orders, but Nia's mind locked on one truth. Hargrove had her boy. She'd survived his frame-up, walked out of cuffs, but this was his real blow. A gut punch she hadn't seen coming. The school loomed ahead, a squat brick building, cop cars flashing in the lot. She screeched to a stop, leaping out, Tanya running. To her, face streaked with tears. "Where is he?" Nia demanded, grabbing a cop by the arm, a young guy with wide eyes. "We're searching. Cameras caught him leaving with a man, hooded, 10 minutes after class started," he said, stammering. Nia's knees buckled, but she caught herself, fury drowning fear. Victor had lost his license, his defamation suit, his bomb, so he'd stolen Malik, turned her victory to ash. She'd find him, rip him apart with her bare hands if she had to. Tom pulled her back, voice urgent. "We'll trace that call, get the FBI, he's done this time." Nia nodded, her breath ragged, staring at the school doors Malik had walked through. She'd beat Victor's frame-up, but this was war now, personal, primal. She'd get her son back and Hargrove would burn. Dust swirled in the humid July air as Nia Jackson screeched her borrowed sedan to a halt outside an abandoned hangar near Chicago's Midway Airport, the sun dipping low, casting the rusted structure in a blood-orange glow. The temperature hovered at 84 degrees Fahrenheit, sweat beading on her brow, her gray suit stained with soot and rain from the night before. Malik, her 14-year-old son, was inside, taken by Victor Hargrove, the man who'd bombed her car and framed her for it. She'd traced his burner call with FAA tech, pinpointing this crumbling relic 5 miles from the school he'd vanished from. Her heart pounded, a feral rhythm driving her as she leapt out, leaving Tom, her legal counsel, scrambling to keep up. "Nia, wait! FBI's 10 minutes out," he shouted, but she didn't slow, her heels sinking into cracked asphalt. The hangar loomed, its corrugated walls peeling, windows shattered into jagged teeth. She'd faced Victor's lies, his mob, his bomb, and now this. Her boy, her world, stolen to break her. Cops had confirmed a hooded man on school cameras, Malik's backpack ditched in the lot, Victor's voice on that call, "You'll never fly again," rang in her ears. A taunt turned threat. She crept toward a side door, rusted hinges creaking as she nudged it open, her breath shallow. Inside, shadows stretched across a cavernous space, old plane parts littering the floor, propellers, seats, a skeletal wing. A faint whimper cut through the silence, and her blood ran cold. Malik. She moved fast, weaving past a stack of crates, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. There, in the far corner, Malik sat bound to a chair, duct tape across his mouth, his brown eyes wide with fear. A hulking figure loomed over him, a hired thug in a black hoodie, a pistol glinting in his hand. Nia's stomach lurched, but rage drowned it out. Victor wasn't here. Coward sent muscle instead. But she'd tear through anyone to reach her son. The thug turned, spotting her, his scarred face twisting into a snarl. "Back off, lady, or he's done," he growled, leveling the gun at Malik's head. Nia froze, 10 feet away, her hands up, mind racing for a play. "You don't want this," she said, voice steady, eyes locked on his. "I'm FAA director. Cops are coming. Let him go. And you might walk." The thug laughed, a harsh bark, but his grip wavered, sweat slicking his brow. Malik squirmed, muffled cries breaking her heart. She edged closer, scanning the space, a wrench on a crate 5 feet to her left. "Victor's using you," she pressed, stepping slow. "He's a pilot, not a king. You're the one holding the bag when this blows up." Doubt flickered in his eyes, and she lunged, snatching the wrench and swinging hard. It cracked against his wrist, the gun clattering to the concrete as he howled, clutching his arm. Nia didn't stop, tackling him full force, her 5'7" frame fueled by fury. They hit the ground, her knees slamming into his chest, the wrench swinging again, smashing his temple. He grunted, dazed, and she wrestled the tape from Malik's mouth, yanking the ropes loose. "Mom," he gasped, tears streaking his face as she pulled him free. "Run!" she barked, shoving him toward the door. The thug groaned, reaching for the gun, but she kicked it away, her heel grinding into his hand. He roared, lunging up, and she swung the wrench once more, connecting with his jaw. He crumpled, out cold, blood pooling beneath him. Malik bolted, Nia behind him, her breath ragged as they burst into the fading light. Sirens wailed, close now, red and blue flashing through the trees. Tom met them at the sedan, his face pale, phone pressed to his ear. "FBI's here," he yelled, waving at the black SUVs screeching in. Agents swarmed the hangar, guns drawn, dragging the thug out in cuffs, his face bruised and slack. Nia clutched Malik, his skinny frame trembling against her, her own hands shaking as relief flooded in. She'd saved him, turned Victor's nightmare into her win. "You're okay," she whispered, kissing his forehead, his curls damp with sweat. He nodded, clinging tight, her rock in the storm. An agent approached, a tall woman with a buzz cut, badge gleaming. "Ms. Jackson, we've got him secured. Any sign of Hargrove?" Nia shook her head, wiping tears from Malik's face. "Not here. Sent this guy instead. But I've got his call logs, burner phone, traced to this spot." She handed over her phone, the evidence locked in, Victor's voice a noose tightening around him. The agent nodded, barking orders, and Nia sank against the car, Malik beside her, the adrenaline, crashing hard. She'd done it. Rescued her son. Handed the feds a gift. Victor was cornered now, his hired muscle caught, his plan in ruins. She'd won, hadn't she? Then a crack split the air, a gunshot slicing through the dusk, and pain seared her arm, hot and sharp. She stumbled, blood blooming on her sleeve, Malik screaming as she shoved him behind the car. The agent ducked, yelling, "Sniper!" Chaos erupted, agents fanning out, guns up, scanning the tree line 50 yards off. Nia pressed her hand to the wound. A graze, shallow but stinging, her vision blurring. "Stay down," she snapped at Malik, her voice hoarse, peering over the hood. A figure vanished into the woods too far to chase. Victor, it had to be, his silver hair a ghost in the shadows. He'd been here, watching, waiting to finish her. Agents swept the area, radios crackling, but he was gone, melted into the trees. Nia's arm throbbed, blood slicking her fingers, but she stood, pulling Malik close, her jaw set. The thug's arrest, the call logs, they'd nail Victor, but he'd slipped away, his shot a parting vow. "He's still out there," she said to Tom, her voice low, lethal. "And he's not done." Tom nodded, grim, dialing the feds for backup. "We've got enough to bury him now. He's a fugitive, won't last long." Nia's eyes hardened, staring at the woods, the sun sinking red behind them. She'd saved Malik, turned Victor's trap into her strike, but his bullet grazed her soul as much as her flesh. Medics arrived, a young guy with a kit bandaging her arm, the sting sharp, but bearable. Malik clung to her good side, silent now, his fear a weight she'd carry forever. The agent returned, her face taut. "Call logs check out. Burner's his. Thug's singing already," says Hargrove paid him $5,000 to grab the kid. "Scare. You off. We're issuing a warrant." Nia nodded, her mind already leaping ahead. Victor had lost his pawn, his plan, but he'd struck back, a sniper's warning she couldn't ignore. She'd won this round, rescued her boy, but the war raged on, darker, deadlier. Hey, if Nia's badass rescue has you pumped, smash that like button and subscribe to see her take Victor down for good. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you're cheering her on after that wrench-swinging takedown, or number 2 if Victor's sniper shot has you shook. She's a fighter, saving her son like a lioness, but that bullet's a game changer. Picture this. Malik's safe, Victor's cornered, but he's still out there, gun in hand. What's his next move to twist this knife deeper? Stay locked in. This is about to explode. The FAA hearing room in downtown Chicago thrummed with tension, its gray walls soaking up the July heat that seeped through sealed windows, the air thick at 80 degrees Fahrenheit despite the humming AC. Nia Jackson stood at the front, her black blazer crisp over a white blouse, her left arm bandaged from Victor Hargrove's sniper graze the night before. Her braids hung loose now, framing a face etched with resolve, her brown eyes steady as she faced the review board. 3 officials in suits, their expressions unreadable behind a long oak table. Reporters packed the back, cameras rolling, notepads out, the room buzzing with whispers after her son's rescue and the hangar chaos. Malik sat safe with Tanya at home, guarded by feds, but Victor's shadow loomed, a fugitive now, his threat pulsing in her blood. Nia cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the murmur like a blade. "Captain Victor Hargrove's crimes go beyond misconduct," she began, laying out files, crew statements, call logs, the thug's confession. Racial harassment on Delta Flight 1423, a fake video smear, a bomb in my car, and last night, kidnapping my son Malik followed by a sniper attack on me. Gasps rippled through, a reporter in a red tie scribbling fast. She played the burner call audio, Victor's growl filling the room. "You'll never fly again." Joshua, the flight attendant, took the stand, his buzz cut gleaming under the lights, recounting Victor's mid-flight berating. Claire, another crew member, added, "He threatened me over nothing. Pure power trip." The board leaned in, pens, scratching as Nia stacked her case brick by brick. Victor's union lawyer, a slick man in a gray suit, stood, his voice oily. "This is subjective. Stress of command, not malice. The rest, unproven allegations." Nia shot back. "Unproven. We've got a confessed kidnapper, a traced call, and my blood on the hangar floor." The room hushed, her bandage a silent witness. Reporters murmured, a woman in glasses whispering, "She's got him." The board chair, a balding man with a stern jaw, nodded, flipping through her evidence. "Suspension extended to 1 year," he declared, banging a gavel. "Pending further review, Hargrove's grounded." Cheers erupted outside. Crowds gathered, after the hangar news, chanting Nia's name through the walls. She stepped out, the humid air hitting her like a wave. 83 degrees now, her arm throbbing but her spine straight. Supporters mobbed the steps, a young woman in a sunflower dress shouting, "You're a hero!" A man with a goatee clapped her shoulder, grinning. "He's done, thanks to you." Nia managed a nod, relief washing through her, though her eyes scanned the crowd, wary. Victor was a fugitive, his license dangling by a thread, and she'd turned his crimes into her triumph. Reporters swarmed, mics thrusting. "Ms. Jackson, how's it feel to win?" She exhaled, voice firm. "It's not about winning, it's about safety, justice." He crossed every line. The buzz swelled, her name trending online. FAA Director Nia Jackson exposes pilot's reign of terror. She'd flipped his smear, his bomb, his kidnapping into this, a public reckoning he couldn't dodge. Malik's face flashed in her mind, safe now, and her chest eased, a rare moment of peace. She headed for her car, a new rental parked across the street, Tom trailing her with updates. "Feds are hunting him," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "That calls a nail in his coffin." She nodded, climbing in, ready to see her son, to breathe. She'd won, hadn't she? Then chaos exploded, the hearing room doors banging, open as Victor burst in, wild-eyed, his silver hair matted, a bulky vest strapped to his chest. "She framed me!" he roared, shoving past security, his voice ragged, unhinged. "This is her lie!" The crowd screamed, reporters ducking as he waved a detonator, wires dangling from the vest. Nia spun, heart slamming, her rental's door still open. "Get back!" an agent yelled, guns drawn. But Victor laughed, a manic edge cutting through. "You think you've won, Jackson? I'll take you all down." She froze, 20 yards away, her mind racing. Malik's safe. But this? Security tackled him, a blur of black vests and shouts pinning him to the pavement, the detonator skittering across the concrete. Nia held her breath, the crowd scattering, a woman in heels tripping as she ran. An agent pried the vest off, wires spilling. Fake, a bluff, no explosives. Victor thrashed, cursing her name, his face red, veins bulging. "You'll pay, Jackson, you'll pay!" he screamed, cuffed now, dragged to a van. Nia exhaled, trembling, her bandage itching as sweat stung the wound. He'd crashed her victory, turned it into theater, but he'd lost again, exposed as a fraud. The crowd regrouped, some cheering louder, others filming his downfall, phones aloft like torches. She slid into the rental, Tom beside her, his face pale. "He's desperate," he said, voice low. "That stunt seals it. Revocation's next." Nia nodded, starting the engine, her hands steady despite the quake inside. She'd faced him down, turned his bluff into her proof, and the world saw it. Her phone buzzed, texts from Maya. "You're trending everywhere. Hero status." She almost smiled, driving off, the city blurring past, sirens fading. Victor was cuffed, his license toast, her name cleared. She'd won the day, a public crown on her fight, and she'd sleep tonight, Malik's hug waiting. The war felt over, didn't it? But that night, as she pulled into her driveway, the south side quiet under a starry sky, 78 degrees now, her peace shattered. Smoke curled from her office window downtown. She saw it on her phone, a news alert flashing. FAA Director's office torched, arson suspected. Her stomach dropped, Malik's voice calling from the porch lost in the roar in her ears. She opened the link, live footage showing flames licking the 10th floor, glass popping, her desk apire. A note in the rubble caught on camera read, "Hargrove's mark." Victor, cuffed hours ago, couldn't have lit it, but his signature burned clear. A final gut punch from his web. Nia's hand shook, dropping the phone, her victory ashes now, literally. She'd saved Malik, grounded Victor, faced his fake bomb, but he'd struck back, his reach slithering beyond cuffs. "Mom?" Malik's voice broke through, small, scared, and she turned, pulling him close, her bandage brushing his cheek. "I'm okay," she lied, her voice hoarse, staring at the screen. Firefighters battled the blaze, water arcing uselessly, her work, her fight, consumed. Tom called, frantic. "Nia, it's him, someone he paid. Feds are on it." She nodded, mute, her mind racing. She'd won the hearing, the crowd, but Victor's war raged on, a fire she couldn't douse. She stood, Malik clinging to her, the night pressing in, humid and heavy. Her office burned, her triumph torched, but her spine stayed steel. Victor thought he'd broken her, left her in ruins, but he'd misjudged her fire. She'd rebuild, hunt his network, end this. The feds swarmed downtown, copters buzzing overhead, and she watched, jaw set. He'd lost his license, his freedom, his bluff, but he'd hit her hard, a parting shot that stung deep. She'd won. The day, yes, but the war stretched on, darker now, a phoenix rising from her ashes. She'd fight always, and he'd fall no matter how many fires he lit. Snow flurried through the Chicago night, a bitter December wind slicing down the streets, the temperature plunging to 22 degrees Fahrenheit, a stark shift from July's humid chaos. Nia Jackson stood in a dimly lit command center, a converted warehouse on the city's edge, her breath fogging in the chill despite the space heaters humming. Her black coat hung heavy over a sweater and jeans, her braids tucked under a wool cap, her left arm still stiff from the sniper graze 5 months, healed. The FAA FBI task force buzzed around her, agents in vests, screens glowing with maps, radios crackling. Victor Hargrove, fugitive since his fake bomb stunt at the hearing, had torched her office, and now she led the hunt to end him, her resolve a fire against the cold. Malik slept safe at home with Tanya, under federal guard, his kidnapping a scar she'd never shake. Victor's arson had gutted her office, but she'd rebuilt, her team scattered to satellite hubs like this one. His license hung by a thread, his cuffs a memory after a jailbreak 2 weeks back. Guards bribed, a union allies, work, no doubt. Nia's eyes locked on a screen, a grainy photo of him from a gas station camera, his silver hair wild, eyes hollow. "He's close," she said, voice steady, pointing at the map. Agent Ruiz, a stocky woman with a buzz cut, nodded beside her. "Midway hangar gave us leads, burner phones, cash drops. He's planning something big." Nia's fingers tapped. A file, thick with evidence. Victor's thug's confession. The traced call. Arson forensics linking to his crew. She'd won the hearing, turned his bluff into her crown, but he'd slipped free, a ghost striking from shadows. Tonight, they'd raid a safe house, a rundown duplex 10 miles north tipped off by a tracked payment. "We move at midnight," Ruiz said, briefing the team, her voice sharp. "Intel says he's got plans, blueprints, flight schedules. Could be a crash." Nia's stomach tightened, her mind flashing to Malik, to the skies she'd sworn to protect. A plane down? Hundreds dead? Victor's revenge stretched beyond her now, a madman's gambit. She suited up, a Kevlar vest snug over her sweater, her hands steady as she checked a radio. Ruiz handed her a Glock, but she waved it off. "I'm not shooting," she said, her tone firm. "I'm here to find him." Ruiz shrugged, leading the convoy out. 4 black SUVs cutting through the snow, tires crunching ice. The city slept. Streetlights flickering, a CTA train rumbling in the distance. Nia rode shotgun, her breath shallow, the safe house looming in her mind. Victor had bombed her car, snatched her son, burned her work. He'd crash a plane to spite her, wouldn't he? She'd stop him, end this war tonight. The duplex squatted in a crumbling neighborhood, its windows dark, snow piling on a sagging porch. Agents fanned out, silent, guns drawn, their boots muffled in the drift. Nia followed Ruiz, her heart pounding, the cold biting her cheeks. They breached the door, wood splintering, flashlights sweeping a trashed living room, pizza boxes, beer, cans, a torn couch. Upstairs, a bedroom yielded gold. Blueprints spread on a card table, a Delta jet circled in red, schedules pinned to a wall. Flight 891, O'Hare to LAX, Ruiz read, voice tight. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., he's crashing it. Nia's blood ran cold, her fingers tracing the plan. 300 souls, a fireball to taunt her. She radioed HQ, voice urgent. Alert O'Hare, ground flight 891, full sweep, Hargrove's targeting it. The task force swept the house, finding cash, a burner phone, but no Victor. He's gone, an agent muttered, kicking a chair. Nia's jaw clenched, scanning the room. A camera feed flickered on a laptop. Street views, live, her warehouse, hub in one frame. He'd watched them, knew they'd come. He steps ahead, she said, dread coiling in her gut. Ruiz nodded, barking orders, but Nia's mind raced. She'd thwarted his crash, saved lives, thought she'd cornered him. Here, hadn't she? Then a new feed popped up. O'Hare, Terminal 3, a gate bustling with pre-dawn travelers. Victor's face flashed, caught on security, his silver hair under a cap, slipping through a crowd. He's there, Nia snapped, pointing, her pulse spiking. Now! Ruiz relayed it, the team piling back into SUVs, snow swirling as they roared toward the airport 15 miles west. Nia gripped her radio, alerting air traffic control. Hargrove's loose at O'Hare. Lock it down. Every gate, every plane. Sirens screamed behind them, the city waking to her war, her victory slipping as Victor danced free. They hit O'Hare at 4 a.m., the terminal a ghost town under lockdown, snow dusting the runways outside. Agents swept gates, Nia trailing Ruiz, her eyes darting, escalators, coffee stands, shadows. He's gone to ground, Ruiz said, frustration edging her voice. Nia nodded, her mind churning. She'd stopped his crash, turned his safe house into her win, but he'd fled, a phantom in her grasp. Her phone buzzed. Tom. Feds have the plane secured. No bombs yet. Relief flickered, but it died fast. Victor wasn't done. She felt it, a predator's breath on her neck. Then her radio crackled, Tanya's voice breaking through, shrill with panic. Nia, he's got my flight. Midway to DC, boarded 10 minutes ago. I saw him. Nia's world tilted, her sister's words a gut punch. Tanya, a nurse, flying for a conference, now trapped with Victor mid-air. Flight 472, Ruiz barked, pulling it up. Left midway at 3:55 a.m., 30 minutes out over Lake Michigan. Nia's knees buckled, but she caught herself, her breath ragged. He's hijacking it, she said, voice breaking, eyes burning. Demands me, or they die. Ruiz relayed it, the command center erupting. Feds scrambling, jets prepping to intercept. Nia's mind raced, Tanya's face flashing, her laugh, her hugs. Victor had lost his crash, his safe house, so he'd taken her sister, turned her triumph to terror. Get me on a plane, she said, voice steel, shoving past Ruiz. I'm going up there. Ruiz grabbed her arm, eyes wide. Nia, that's insane. He's armed, unhinged. But Nia shook her off, her resolve ablade. He wants me. I'll give him me and end this. They raced to a hangar, a small FAA jet fueling fast, snow whipping around them. Nia climbed aboard, her coat flapping. The pilot, a lean woman with gray eyes, nodding grim. We'll catch him over the lake, mid-air transfer, she said, engines roaring to life. Nia strapped in, the jet lifting off, Chicago shrinking below, a frozen sprawl under a black sky. Her heart hammered, Tanya's voice echoing, Victor's sneer a ghost in her mind. She'd stopped his crash, raided his lair, but he'd flipped, it hijacking her family, her life. The jet climbed 35,000 feet, Lake Michigan a dark void ahead. She'd face him, save Tanya, finish this, or die trying. The FAA jet screamed through the December night, slicing over Lake Michigan at 35,000 feet, the wind outside a howling beast as snow streaked past the windows. Inside, The cabin rattled, a frigid 20 degrees Fahrenheit seeping through the hull despite the heaters buzzing. Nia Jackson sat strapped into a jump seat, her black coat tight over her sweater, her braids loose under a headset, her left arm throbbing faintly from the old sniper graze. The pilot, a lean woman, named Carter with gray eyes, gripped the controls, her voice crackling through the comms. "We're 5 minutes from intercept. Transfer's risky. Winds 30 knots. Nia nodded, her jaw set, her pulse a war drum. Victor Hargrove had hijacked Tanya's flight, midway to DC, 30 minutes out, demanding her surrender, or everyone died. Below, the lake stretched, black and endless, a void swallowing the horizon, the jet's lights flickering against the storm. Nia's mind locked on Tanya, her sister, trapped with a madman who'd bombed her car, kidnapped Malik, torched her office. She'd stopped his plane crash, raided his safe house, but he'd flipped it, snaring her family midair. The midair transfer was insane, boarding a hijacked jet through a pressurized hatch. But she'd face him, save Tanya, and this. Carter glanced back, her face taut. "Feds are shadowing us, 2 F-16s. They'll shoot if we can't stop him." Nia's stomach twisted, but she nodded. No jets would fire on her sister's plane, she'd make sure of it. The hijacked jet loomed ahead, a Delta Airbus A320, its lights winking through the snow, cruising steady despite the chaos inside. Carter aligned their jet, a smaller Gulfstream, alongside, the wings perilously close, the storm buffeting both. "Hatch ready," Carter said, flipping switches, a side door hissing open to a roaring wind. Nia unbuckled, grabbing a harness, her boots steady on the vibrating floor. An agent, a wiry guy named Evans, clipped her in, shouting over the gale. 10 seconds to connect. Go!" The jet synced, a tube bridging the gap, and Nia leapt, the cold clawing her skin as she crawled through, her heart slamming, the Airbus's hatch yawning ahead. She tumbled in, the hatch slamming shut, the cabin's hum swallowing the storm's roar. Passengers cowered in seats, 30 souls, their faces pale, eyes wide. Business travelers, a mom with a kid, Tanya near the back, her nurse scrubbed stark against the upholstery. Victor stood at the cockpit door, his silver hair wild, a pistol in one hand, a knife in the other, his uniform swapped for a ragged jacket. "Well, well," he snarled, spotting her, his voice a rasp of rage. "The Queen herself. Come to grovel?" Nia straightened, 5 feet 7 inches of steel, her eyes locked on his. "Let them go, Victor. It's me you want." He laughed. A jagged sound stepping closer, the gun trained on her chest. "You think you're a hero? Teaching me a lesson?" His eyes burned, unhinged, spit flecking his lips. "You took my wings, my life. I'll take yours, piece by piece." Tanya whimpered, tied to a seat, her dark eyes pleading. Nia's fist clenched, her mind racing. 30 passengers, a gun, a knife. No room for error. "You're done," she said, voice low, lethal. "Feds have your thug, your calls, your arson. This ends now." Victor's grin twisted, his gun waving. "Not yet, Jackson. They die unless you beg." Nia edged forward, her boots soft on the carpet, her eyes flicking to the cockpit. The co-pilot slumped, unconscious, blood on his temple. Victor had taken full control, a pilot-turned tyrant. "Beg?" she said, her tone ice. "I don't beg. I fight." She lunged, not for him, but the controls, slamming her shoulder into the panel, her bandaged arm screaming as she yanked the yoke. The jet pitched, a sickening drop, passengers screaming, trays crashing. Victor stumbled, cursing, his gun firing wild, a bullet punching the ceiling. Nia ducked, rolling into the aisle, her breath ragged, the plane tilting hard. She scrambled up, Victor lunging, his knife slashing air inches from her face. "You'll kill us all!" he roared, grabbing her coat, his strength feral. She twisted, slamming her elbow into his nose, cartilage crunching, blood spraying. He howled, dropping the knife, and she kicked it away, her heel grinding into his shin. The jet leveled, autopilot kicking in, but the storm rocked it, a shudder throwing them both. Nia seized the moment, tackling him into the cockpit door, her fists pounding his chest, rage fueling every blow. For Malik, she hissed, a punch to his jaw. For Tanya, another to his gut. He gasped, clawing at her. But she was relentless. A mother's fury unleashed. Passengers untied Tanya, a man in a tie helping, her sobs cutting through the chaos. Victor swung, his fist grazing Nia's cheek, but she ducked, grabbing his gun arm, twisting until it cracked, the pistol clattering free. She kicked it under, a seat pinning him, her knee on his throat. "Land it," she snarled, nodding at the controls. "Now!" He wheezed, blood dripping from his nose, defiance flickering out. "You'll pay," he choked, but she pressed harder, her voice steel. "Land or I break you." The jet dipped again, the storm howling, and he nodded, crawling to the yoke, her grip unrelenting. Carter's voice crackled through her headset, faint but clear. "We're below. Force him down. Midway's ready." Nia shoved Victor forward, his hands trembling as he adjusted the controls, the jet descending, snow blurring the windshield. "You're finished," she said, her knee still on him. Tanya rushing to her side, free now, clinging tight. The plane shuddered, landing gear whining, and hit the runway with a screech, skidding on ice, passengers bracing. It stopped, engines winding down, the storm a dull roar outside. Nia stood, panting. Victor slumped, bloodied, beaten, as feds stormed aboard, cuffing him, dragging him out. The cabin erupted, cheers and sobs. Tanya hugging her, tears soaking Nia's coat. "You did it," her sister whispered, voice breaking. Nia nodded, her chest heaving, relief flooding in. She'd saved them, flipped Victor's hijack into her. Win, grounded his madness mid-air. Agents swarmed, medics checking passengers, the mom with the kid crying thanks. Nia stepped onto the tarmac, snow stinging her face, Victor's glare burning as he was hauled to a van. "It's over," Tom said, jogging up, his breath fogging. "He's done. License gone. Jail for life." She nodded, Malik's face flashing, safe at home, her war won. But as they dragged Victor away, his head lolled, his voice a rasp cutting through the wind. "Bigger plan, Jackson. You missed it," he croaked, a grin splitting his bloodied face, cryptic, chilling. Nia froze, snow swirling, her triumph souring. Agents shoved him in, doors slamming, but his words lingered, a splinter in her mind. She'd outsmarted him, crashed his jet, saved Tanya. But what had she missed? Tom grabbed her arm, pulling her to a car, his voice urgent. "He's bluffing, let's go." She nodded, climbing in, the heater blasting, but dread coiled tight. The fight felt done, didn't it? Midway buzzed, lights flashing, snow piling on runways as they drove off, Tanya beside her, silent, shaken. Nia's arm ached, her cheek bruised, but her spine stayed steel. Victor was cuffed, his hijack foiled, her family intact. She'd won the showdown, turned his endgame into her stand, a legend etched in the storm. Yet his whisper gnawed, a shadow, on her victory. Bigger plan? Her mind raced, replaying his moves. Bomb, kidnapping, fire, hijack. What else could he have? She stared out, the lake a black smear, her resolve hardening. She'd ended him here, but his ghost lingered, a war knot, fully buried. Weeks after the mid-air showdown, Nia Jackson stood in her rebuilt office at FAA headquarters in downtown Chicago. The January cold pressing against the new glass windows, the temperature outside a biting 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Snow dusted the city, a quiet blanket over the chaos she'd endured. Her black blazer hung crisp over a turtleneck, her braids swept into a high bun, her left arm fully healed from Victor Hargrove's sniper graze. The room smelled of fresh paint and oak, her desk replaced, files neatly stacked, rebirth from the ashes of his arson. Malik and Tanya were safe at home, federal guards gone, life inching back to normal. Victor rotted in a maximum security cell, his license revoked for life after the hijack. A medal pinned to Nia's chest at a ceremony days ago for her heroism. She'd won, hadn't she? The medal glinted on her desk, a gold star from the FAA board, her legacy cemented. Director Nia Jackson, the woman who'd grounded a madman mid-flight, saved 30 lives. and exposed his rot. Reporters had swarmed the event, cameras flashing, headlines screaming, FAA hero ends pilot's reign of terror. She'd smiled for the photos, Malik beaming beside her, Tanya's arm around her shoulders, but Victor's last words gnawed at her. Bigger plan, Jackson. You missed it. She dismissed it then, adrenaline pumping, his cuffs clanking as he'd been dragged off the tarmac. Now, in the stillness, doubt crept in, a splinter she couldn't pull. She sank into her chair, the leather creaking, and opened her laptop, scanning updates. Victor's trial loomed, his kidnapping, arson and hijacking charges a life sentence waiting. The thug from the hangar had flipped, detailing payments, plans. Victor's web unraveled. Her office fire traced to a union lackey, caught on tape, another nail in his coffin. She'd stopped his plane crash, rescued Malik, faced him down mid-air, and rebuilt from his ashes. The war was over, her crown secure. She leaned back, exhaling. Lake Michigan a frozen shimmer outside, peace settling in her bones. Malik's laugh from last night's dinner echoed, Tanya's hug a balm. She'd done it, ended him, moved on. Then her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Check your mail. Her stomach tightened, a chill prickling her spine. She glanced at her inbox. Nothing new. Then at the physical stack on her desk, delivered that morning. A plain envelope sat atop, no return address, her name scrawled in black ink. She tore it open, her fingers steady despite the tremor inside, and pulled out a single sheet, typed, unsigned. Hargrove trained us. We're in the skies waiting. You stopped one. You won't stop us all. A list followed. 10 names. Pilots, airlines across the U.S., dates stretching months ahead. Her breath caught, the room spinning, the metals shine mocking her now. She stood, pacing, the paper crumpling in her fist. Victor's bigger plan, not a bluff, a bomb ticking in plain sight. A racist cabal, pilots he'd mentored, embedded in the system she ran, ready to strike. Her mind raced, his rants, his union ties, whispers from his file she'd overlooked. She'd grounded him, yes, but he'd sown seeds. A legacy of hate she hadn't seen. The hangar blueprints, the crash plan, they were a decoy, a flare to blind her while his real game brewed. She grabbed her phone, dialing Tom, her voice sharp. Emergency meeting now. Victor's got a network, pilots, active, planning chaos. I've got names. Tom burst in 10 minutes later, tie loose, his face pale as she shoved the list at him. Feds need this, he said, scanning it, his voice tight. 10 pilots? How'd he? Nia cut him off, her tone steel. He trained them years back. Racists like him burrowed in. I stopped his hijack, but this is bigger, systemic. She paced again, the window framing a city oblivious to the threat. Delta, United, American, names she knew, routes she'd flown, now ticking bombs. She'd saved Tanya, Malik, 30 passengers, but hundreds, thousands, dangled in his shadow. Her victory, her medal, hollowed out in a heartbeat. She called Ruiz, the FBI agent from the manhunt, her voice urgent through the line. Victor's got a cabal, pilots, active, planning crashes. I've got a list, 10 names, move fast. Ruiz swore softly, her radio crackling in the background. We'll raid his cell, pull records. He's locked, but his reach. She trailed off and Nia nodded, mute, her mind leaping. She'd expose them, root them out, but the scope stunned her. Months, years of his poison, her skies tainted. She hung up, turning to Tom. Get the board, every airline CEO. We're locking down flights, screening pilots now. The day blurred. Meetings, calls, feds, storming Victor's cell, seizing logs, phones, scraps of his plan. Nia stood before, the board at dusk, snow falling thick outside. Her list projected on a screen, her voice steady despite the quake inside. Hargrove built this. Racists he trained, embedded in our system, waiting to strike. We've grounded 3 already. Delta's got 2, United 1. 7 still loose. Gasps rippled, the chair slamming a fist on the table. How'd we miss this? Nia met his glare, unflinching. He hid it, used me as a distraction. I'm Ending it. They nodded, grim, her medal a silent vow now, not a trophy. Night fell, the office quiet, snow piling against the glass, a hush over Chicago at 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Nia sat alone, the list burned into her mind, her resolve a blade. She'd stopped Victor, cuffed him, rebuilt, but his cabal mocked her peace, a war she hadn't won. Her phone buzzed. Ruiz. Cell Raid found a journal, names match plus dates. First strikes next week, JFK to LA. Nia's jaw set, her fingers typing orders. Ground it, screen every pilot, dig deeper. She'd root them out, one by one. Her sky's hers again. She stood staring at the snow, her breath fogging the pain, ready to fight, her legacy shifting from hero to hunter. Then her radio crackled, static slicing the silence, and Victor's voice rasped through, faint, chilling. Told you, Jackson. Bigger plan. I'm free. They sprung me. See you in the skies. The line died, her blood icing over, the room a tomb. She spun, dialing Ruiz, her voice breaking. He's out. Jailbreak just now. Ruiz cursed, chaos erupting on her end, sirens wailing. Nia's knees buckled, but she caught herself, the list trembling in her hand. He'd escaped, his cabal alive, her war reborn. She'd grounded him, saved lives, won the medal, but he'd flipped it, a phoenix from his cell, leading his hate from shadows. She sank into her chair, snow swirling outside, her mind a storm. Victor, free, his voice a taunt, his pilots poised to strike. She'd stopped his hijack, his crash, his fire, but this? A network she'd missed, a fight stretching beyond him. Her medal glinted, a hollow star now, her triumph a mirage. She stood, grabbing her coat, her breath ragged, eyes burning. I'll find you, she whispered, the words a vow, her radio silent, the city sleeping under snow. She'd hunt him, his cabal, end this for good. Malik, Tanya, the skies, her soul on the line. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. She stepped out, the cold biting her face, her sedan waiting, engine rumbling as she climbed in. The screen faded in her mind. Victor's grin, his list, her fight. She'd won battles, rebuilt ruins, but he'd left a legacy she'd tear apart. Her tires crunched snow, headlights cutting the dark, her resolve a fire no storm could douse. He'd escaped, his cabal loomed, but she'd rise. A hunter now, not a hero. The skies were hers, and she'd take them back, no matter how long, how hard, how bloody. The story closed, but her war roared on, a cliffhanger etched in ice. Nia Jackson's relentless battle against Victor Hargrove unveils profound lessons about resilience, justice, and the pervasive fight against racial injustice. First, courage under fire is non-negotiable. Nia faced public humiliation, a bomb, kidnapping, and a hijacking, yet never wavered, teaching us that standing firm against hate, even when it escalates, is vital. Her story shows that racism isn't just words. It's a system, a network, like Victor's cabal, lurking in the bay, shadows, ready to strike. Ignoring it doesn't make it vanish. Confronting it head-on does. Second, power must be wielded responsibly. Nia's FAA authority wasn't a weapon for revenge, but a tool for accountability, proving that true strength lies in fairness, not fury. Victor's downfall came from his own arrogance, a reminder that unchecked privilege crumbles under scrutiny. Third, victories are fragile. Nia grounded Victor, saved lives, rebuilt her office, only to face his escape and a broader threat. It's a stark lesson. Winning battles doesn't end wars. Vigilance does. Racism's roots run deep, and cutting one branch leaves others to grow. Finally, community matters. From passengers cheering to feds backing her, Nia's fight wasn't solo. We're stronger together, pushing back against hate as a united front. So what's the takeaway? Stand up, stay sharp, and support each other, because the fight's never truly over. Now, what do you think Victor's next move might be with his cabal still out there? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if Nia's grit inspires you, and subscribe for more tales of defiance against injustice. Share this story to spark the conversation. Together, we can shine a light on these battles. Thanks for joining Nia's journey. Here's to courage and justice lighting your path ahead.